Hi, my name is Brenda Nordstrom, and this is an introduction video for teachers as part of a curriculum developed by the Lakeshore Human Trafficking Task Force. First, I want to welcome you and thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Second, I want to take a quick moment to introduce myself. As I mentioned before, my name is Brenda, and I'm a trainer with the Lakeshore Human Trafficking Task Force. I'm both a nurse and an educator. I've been a registered nurse for over 30 years, and I obtained my first degree in education in 2001. I taught health education in a middle school setting for 7 years. However, I missed being a full-time nurse and returned to healthcare. A few years ago, though, I moved back into the healthcare arena, and I now teach nursing at the collegiate level. One of the courses I teach is called Universal Trafficking in Persons. My goal with this introduction video is to provide some information to help you as you implement this curriculum with your students. Now, what is in the curriculum? First, the task force taped several segments. You will see videos or recordings of survivors as they tell their stories. There's even a former porn addict who makes the connection between viewing porn and sex trafficking. We have someone who talks about labor trafficking. From the law enforcement side, we've got cyber crimes. Our county's prosecutor talks to the students. And then there's also some little videos, links to videos on myths and misconceptions on human trafficking that will be provided as well. The videos are taped in segments, so you can either show them one at a time and break it up, or you can show it all at the same time and then do your activities afterwards. Along with the videos, we have some student activities, worksheets, things that you can do with your students. And then we have some teacher discussion guidelines or guidings for your discussions, maybe for some journaling, a way to debrief after watching the videos. And of course, we've included several other resources that are meant just for the educators. So what is human trafficking? Just to kind of get you set up as the teacher implementing the curriculum, it's important to know that trafficking of children in the United States has been clouded by a lack of awareness and exacerbated by stigma as well as denial. Now, communities and schools are beginning to familiarize themselves with the nature of the crime. Child trafficking is child abuse, and properly understanding this reality allows educators to minimize judgment, refer to proper resources and services, as well as prevent victimization and providing a safe environment for every student. With the passage of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000, the trafficking of children for sex and labor was criminalized, with the crucial caveat that anyone under the age of 18 who is induced to perform a commercial sex act is a victim of child sex trafficking, regardless of whether or not force, fraud, or coercion are involved. Unfortunately, people treat the exploited minor in a human trafficking incident where sex is engaged for profit as a perpetrator of the crime rather than as a victim. It is a contradiction that public outrage occurs when an 8th grader is molested by a family friend, and yet that same adolescent when they are sexually abused by a stranger who pays them or someone for that sex act, now all of a sudden the community often wrongfully perceives that act as willing criminal prostitution. The law recognizes that children cannot give meaningful consent to such a crime. Educators must remember that a child involved in prostitution should always be treated as a victim, and that criminal responsibility rests with the trafficker. While most recognize sex trafficking as a form of human trafficking, many do not realize that children can be used for labor trafficking as well. One of the video segments that is included in the curriculum will focus on labor trafficking as well. As an educator, as you are all very well aware, preparation is key. When you use the video as part of your teaching time, please make sure that you schedule enough time for debriefing. You need time for the students to just take a moment and internalize and understand what it is they watched, and then process that in a safe environment with the teacher or educator overseeing and maintaining that safe environment. So part of that is preparing class conduct guidelines. When I used to teach middle school, I know that that was very important because sex ed was part of that education. And just having specific words so they knew right up front what words were allowed, what words weren't allowed. We could express thoughts and ideas. We could ask questions, but we couldn't negatively respond to somebody in a put down kind of way, or perform, basically have behaviors that could be interpreted as harassment by others. You know this though from every day in your classroom. It's just that it's more sensitive when talking about these topics. Anticipate and plan your responses. Some students are going to take the opportunity to try to do a shock and awe. That has happened to me many times when I was in the secondary setting. It was all about how can we get a response out of the teacher. But you're also going to have situations where students are going to respond because they've been what we would call triggered. There is something that was said in a video that may bring up memories of past abuse, current victimization. So kind of watch for just questions or responses that don't seem right. You just feel it in your gut that something wasn't right about how they responded to the topic. They may become very withdrawn. They may seem very anxious. They might seem to hide, or they could have outbursts. They could say, "This is stupid. What are we learning about this for?" Those kinds of things. So you know your students. You know what type of responses to expect because nobody knows them better than you. You've been in the classroom with them every day for months now. So just kind of have a general idea of how you are going to respond when questions come up. And it is perfectly okay to say, you know what, I'm not sure how to respond to that question, or I don't know the answer to that. Let me take a minute and I will research this, I will ask questions, and I will get back to you later. And then, of course, always follow through and get back to that student. Watch for those signs of possible distress. And if you see somebody who appears distressed just by their nonverbals, don't bring attention to them, but afterwards, make sure that you connect with them one-on-one and just let them know that you care. Let them know what you saw. I noticed that you were fidgeting, you were kind of withdrawn. You're normally very active and ask questions, but this time around you didn't. So, I'm just kind of concerned. What's happening? What were your thoughts? Let them know that you care and that you are a safe person for them to talk to. It is possible that through the showing of these videos and the discussions with the students afterwards, that you could run into a situation where you believe a child is or a student is being abused or possibly even trafficked. Now, trafficking does fall under Michigan mandated reporting. And of course, as teachers, you are mandated reporters. Um, there are penalties if you fail to report a suspected incident of abuse, but the Mandated Reporting Act also provides you immunity if you report in good faith. So the Child Protection Law states that a verbal report should be made immediately once a mandated reporter has reasonable cause to suspect child abuse or neglect. The phone number here is 855-444-3911. So then you give a verbal report. Once you have done a verbal report, then you must follow that up with a written report within 72 hours. Just some tips for if a student should disclose a situation to you. During that disclosure, you should maintain eye contact with that student, avoid displaying any signs of shock or disapproval. You should only ask open-ended questions, mainly like how or what. You don't want to do any leading questions indicating what kind of answer you want the student to give you. You want to allow them to freely discuss the incident without being led in that conversation. For example, how did you get that bruise? Again, these discussions should only proceed to the point needed to determine that a report needs to be made. Once you have determined that a report needs to be made, don't continue to ask questions, don't interview, don't investigate. That is not our role as mandated reporters. We need to leave that up to law enforcement and CPS. So students may want to tell you what has happened, but they may also want to maintain loyalty to their parent, to their friend. And if a report is going to be made, we need to maintain that trust with the child or the student. So that means we have to let them know that we are going to report it if it's appropriate for that situation. So they need to be made aware. Understand they could become extremely fearful, they could become very, very angry, but if they find out after the fact that you made a report and didn't tell them, the consequences are another insult to them. Another trusted adult failed them. I personally have done both. I have reported something and did not let the middle schooler know what I was doing, and that was early on in my career, and to this day I greatly regret it. It harmed our relationship, and it made matters worse for her and for her family relationships too. So I learned the hard way, and I strongly recommend that you do let them know, especially if they're older, that you are in a position where you have to report. That is the law. So what can the school do related to human trafficking? The first thing is education and awareness. The module that you have been given, the videos, the assignments for the students, this is all first step in this area. But once you have the ability, you've learned more about human trafficking, I strongly encourage that you educate yourself more on the topic, educate your co-workers, maybe even branch out and offer education for parents. But we need to provide the education. We need to make people aware. So not just the teachers, but the students, the parents, everybody needs to be aware of human trafficking. So train on the risk factors for vulnerable children, the signs and indicators of exploitation and trafficking, as well as a victim-centered approach. So how you approach students in a way to minimize traumatization. So everyone's, all staff, parapros, the office, the lunch personnel, everybody. It also is imperative that school personnel understand the best practices for interacting with trafficking survivors. They often struggle with shame and embarrassment and too frequently believe that their victimization is their fault. We need to suspend all judgments and be open-minded. This is crucial to creating a trusting and safe relationship where vulnerable students can feel safe to confide and seek support. We also need to have policy and procedures in place. These procedures are similar to those used in cases of sexual assault or for reporting child abuse. Because trafficking of children is a form of child abuse, the protocol may just be an addendum to the existing child abuse reporting protocol. An effective school policy should require that school administrators, authorities be notified immediately, but also maintain the student's confidentiality to the extent possible under the law. Then once a child victim is identified, it is imperative that responding providers coordinate intervention and support for the victim, as well as ensure minimal impact on other students within the building. So contacting CPS as part of your child abuse reporting, they will help walk you through the procedures and take over the law enforcement side of it. They will coordinate with law enforcement. But as far as the school goes, investigate your campus safety, not the incident itself, but how could things be improved within the campus environment to either prevent victimization or to catch it a little bit earlier. So find out how it is that you can improve. We can all improve. Provide support, not only to any collateral traumatization with other students, but the staff. Whenever we have a situation where somebody is trafficked or other types of abuse happen, we do need to have support as the reporter. And then, of course, collaborate. Collaborate with law enforcement, collaborate with organizations such as the Lakeshore Human Trafficking Task Force, but we can't do this all as one entity. We have to work together. So again, thank you for taking the time to watch this introduction video, and most importantly, for taking the time to raise awareness about human trafficking. And remember, along with the Teacher's Toolkit are resources if you are interested in learning more about human trafficking and how you can help identify both those at risk for being trafficked and those who may have already been victimized. The only way we can stop human trafficking is if we all do something. Thank you.